On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk about reassessing work from home and Lightapalooza. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 314, You're an Asset.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Bob Archer. He is the senior editor at CE Pro. How you doing, Bob?
Great. And yourself, Matt?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for being here, my friend. Then we have Mr. Richard Fregosa. You know him as Uncle Richie. He is the principal at Fregosa Design. How you doing, Richie?
Mellow West Coast greetings. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Freezing here. Glad about that.
It's freezing there?
Is not.
I was going to say, it's beautiful up here. It's 20, 22 degrees Fahrenheit, blue skies. It's a bluebird day, my friend. I went out the other day. It was, I went skiing by myself for an hour and a half, and it was 5 degrees, felt like -3. Glorious. I was in my happy place. I thought of you the whole time. Bob knows what I'm talking about. All right, gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro and Dan Farcy. Is it time to reassess the work from home and hybrid work movement? This is a wonderful article from our friend Dan going through a lot of aspects of work from home and what it's going to look like in the future, as well as the hybrid aspect. He has a great conversation with Rachel Rouse, who's the director of interior for the Dallas office and the principal at HOK. Bob, I want to start with you on this, and definitely go read this article. I don't often or always tell you to go read this stinking article, but go read this one because it covers a lot that hasn't been approached in this manner before. But what I wanted to talk to you about, Bob, was as you read this, as you look through this, and as you look across kind of the landscape of what the model of work looks like right now. Obviously, there's a whole group of working people who don't have the option to work from home. But for the portion that do, right, we're really stuck in a weird expanse right now where there are people that want to continue to work from home. There are people that want a hybrid option. They want to go in 2 days a week. There's a lot of people that want to get just thinking back to, I don't want to say back to normal, but they want to get back to that routine of waking up, having breakfast, getting a coffee, going to the office, and then coming home. And they want to get back to that. And then there's the whole aspect of management that may want some form or fashion of any or all of those situations. What's the divide here, and what role, if any, does our industry actually play in this?
Realistically, I don't think we have a big say in what's going to happen, but I do think that if we step up as an industry and let corporate America know that we can support their employees work from home in either a hybrid model or a full-time work from home gig, that we can support them with the tools necessary to work efficiently, including, network gear, cameras, microphones, secure systems, anything that they need to work from home and work from home effectively. I do think, my opinion is that I think going forward, we're going to see most businesses who have employees in the office that are capable of working from home, they're going to be on some kind of hybrid program simply because of the cost of corporate real estate that in the commercial real estate market, these companies can downsize, have smaller offices because their employees are working from home, so they can save a couple of bucks versus what they were spending, as few as 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Richie, one of the other aspects of the article here is talking about kind of the juxtaposition between, as we're going back to the office, that a lot of workplaces are looking for a better aesthetic and, dare I say, more effective tech, right? They seem to be trying to find a way to have a much cooler office space, but with tech that works and is effective and easy to use, which I would argue that all three of us on this call have felt that we've been at that point for a while, that we have effective, easy to use tech, but you yourself, I can guarantee, have wonderful examples of really easy to use systems that still can't be used effectively by staff. What does it take to get there? And is it just is it a pass off between design, tech, and productivity? Do we have to just choose one?
A lot of the times when you see that when they're talking to these businesses and they're talking to, HR managers or C-level executives, they're painted into a corner of saying, we have no idea what we're doing. Because they're stuck. They're stuck. And so they have to decide whether the market is going to lead them to how they work or whether they lead the market. Of course, they want to lead the way.
Yes.
But they can't. It's out of their control. And the hard part is, for the longest time, work from home. And this is somebody who's had a home office for, not 25 years now. In working home office, that I'm more effective out here than I am, in the field or in meetings or anything else. But the longest time, companies, their story was, well, there's no data that shows that work from home is effective. There's no data that says you can get the work done remotely, as opposed to, well, there's data now. And so the narrative is no longer, well, we don't know if you're going to be effective. We don't know if you're going to screw off. We don't know if you're going to be, now it's going to be well, now you're not making the human connection. There was a pivot, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how to control their assets, because that's what employees are, right? Their assets. So when you get the employees in your controlled environment, whether they want to admit it or not, they're not necessarily always worried about the output, right? Not the outcome. They like the how. Well, we want to see how this works, right? We've got a management team and managers who have 30 people to report. How are we going to assess their metrics? How are we going to assess when people show up on time or not on time or miss? It's an antiquated approach to the workplace that has been accelerated through forces outside of the normal business environment. And businesses are catching up and they don't quite know what to do, but they don't want to admit that they don't quite know what to do. And so the grumblings now are, well, how do we make it more of a human experience, right? The telepresence, right? How do we make it so that a meeting is a meeting and you feel like you're there?
The metaverse. That's the answer.
Which is their way of saying, okay, we're going to call you in for a 4-hour mind-numbing, quarterly meeting, but you're going to get a whole lot out of it more because you're there. And we could see that you're taking notes, as opposed to, no, we found ways for it to be effective. And it's tough because it feels to me, again, and Bob makes a good point. Commercial real estate's expensive. However, there are still many companies, because the CEOs and the executive management of those people have been doing it a certain way for 30 years since they've been appointed. And their predecessor did it this way, and their predecessor did it that way. They don't want to be the first ones to buck the tradition. So, to save face as a company, they rush to get everybody back to keep how things were. Let's say you're a public company, right? It's perception. If you're showing that you've returned to business as normal, well, what's the easiest way to do that? Have bodies inside and sitting in cubicles and working their way through. But that doesn't mean their business is doing any better. It just means it looks that they're presenting a return to normalcy. The one thing that, we constantly talk about these things, and nobody likes talking about it because we've been at it for 2 years, but all of these companies already have their unwritten what happens if we get shut down again game plan. Every single one of them. Because to think that, let's put it this way, if a company doesn't have one, that's going to be rough. Because we're hoping that we don't have something as drastic as previously. But now that it's been done once, right, the seal has been broken.
Yeah.
Right? So once that seal has been broken and it's occurred that as a way to aid the public health conversation, regardless of what side you are on it or not, but, if a decision is made in the interest of public health, the businesses have to have game plans and contingencies built in. But they don't want to spend money. They don't think they have to. So, that's the rough part, is that you don't want to plan for worst case because of how it looks. You don't want to go back to how it was because there are some savings, but you have to change a whole lot of mindsets over it and how you treat your employees. That's how it comes down to, honestly, is like, how do you want to treat your employees? Companies that are being successful are looking at their employees as human beings with families and children and all of these things that they never had to admit before, right? They never had to acknowledge it because your personal life was your personal life and your work was your work life. And once you left their building, they could be less empathetic to your personal life because you were the asset coming in and out. Now that you're asking them, now that you as a business are coming into your employee's home, a lot of that leverage starts going away.
Yeah.
and so it's interesting because, they're tough decisions all around because it's definitely changed. The question is, I think what's going to happen now is it's just going to scatter. And employees are going to have the ability to say, well, no, I want this company that's a work from home.
It's an interesting topic right now, simply because, from what I've read, a lot of younger people out there are really pushing for work from home and hybrid work environments. And you might get this old staunchy CEO who might say and be adamant, oh, I want my guys in the office, and the younger people might be pushing back. It could be work from home and hybrid work office places could become a selling point to attract younger talent into these businesses. And it could really hurt some of these older companies that kind of set in their ways.
It was either Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs famously, like 6 months ago, did if you want to get New York paid, you need to show up to the stinking office. He didn't use stinking, but this is my show, and it's me, so that's what happens. Let me ask you a completely side question to this. We know that there are 3 documented learning styles, right? Rich, you should get this because of your wife's work in education. We know that there are 3 different learning styles, that every child is one of 3, essentially. And that is how you learn best. Are we going to start to see a push to determine who is effective on the workforce in their different working style? And will that come into play?
If they can't attract quality employees, yes.
All right.
I think that Bob brought up a great point, which is you have let's just talk corporate America. Let's not talk small businesses. Let's just talk corporate America.
And I realize this is a Resi show, but I like this conversation, so we're doing it.
People in Resi are going to be working in these businesses, right?
Exactly.
So they all, it all comes down to these are going to be the employees of these corporations who are going to be buying the goods that we're trying to provide.
Yep.
That's kind of how I'm putting those dots together.
I'm with you.
And it ties into the next part, which is that you have a generation of business leaders. Let's just say they're my generation, a little bit older, maybe the generation past me. But you're talking 50 to 70-year-old men. great percentage of them.
Yep.
Who have had a way of doing things, and like just like you said, Morgan Stanley is a perfect example, right? This is the way we do it. This is how we've made our money. Kick rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody who went through business school up until recently was faced with, yeah, okay, you want to go to a big five? This is what you got to do. You got to pay your dues. You got to do this. You got to do that, right? You get to go through the meat grinder. And Bob made a perfect point. This new generation of workers coming through, and not even from four-year schools, entering the workplace, who have an entrepreneurial mindset, who have access to side hustles in a different way and business models in a different way, who are coming in, and these new employees are coming in and saying, no, this is absolutely about my mental well-being, about my quality of life. And it was funny, I was reading something the other day, the stigma of job hopping is gone.
Yeah.
That is a remnant of my generation, right? Where if you had holes in your resume, or if it showed you going from place to place, that was a black mark on you. That no longer applies. This generation coming in goes, I don't care. I was constantly looking for the next opportunity. And so I'm not going to be up to these businesses partially. I think it's going to be, that decision is going to be made for them because of their employment pool.
Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.